I
Interesting.
wish I could say it was like really simple and you just like you
I
just take that
understand.
one and then it's done. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like all these things. It's like we were talking with the homeopathy. It's about looking at the individual and seeing what's going to work for them. If they're very frail, they're undernourished, the blood
Mm.
needs nourishing, but they're not going to assimilate it, then you're going to start off with really small doses and you might introduce it with something warming that would help them get it into the system, that would help them
Mm.
absorb it. Or we can mix it with sulfur. If we put some
Mm.
sulfur in with the iron, it will slow down the rate at that the body digests it. So we can flood the system with more iron, but by mixing sulfur with it, it doesn't make it so, it doesn't absorb so quickly. So the body can take what it
Right.
wants and you can let the excess pass. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very obviously very similar to Unani, and it might even be the case when you have in, clients or patients that are anemic. Iron might not even be the thing that they really require. For example, uh, choleric individual whose stomach is just overheating, and so the food is just passing way too quickly, and so it's not, and thus the nutrients aren't being absorbed. It's not about then feeding them more nutrients in terms of iron, extra iron, but it's just about slowing down the stomach.
Mm,
And it could be a completely different remedies. Some yeah,
totally.
something like amla, like just cool down the system and then building on it afterwards if they are
And
still and
it,
pardon?
sorry, interesting. I'm just going to say, sorry, interesting you say
Yeah.
amber as well, because obviously that vitamin C helps
Oh,
absorb, you need vitamin C to help
yeah,
absorb iron as well. So
yeah.
iron amla is used a lot in the processing anyway of iron because
Oh, really?
it opens the iron. It makes it more assimilatable and it gets it ready to be digested by the body. I mean, like weirdly, the best
That's
thing,
so fascinating. Yeah.
the most amazing thing, the weirdest thing about iron is the thing that works the best, the thing that prepares it the most is cow urine. Cow urine,
Really?
yeah, cow urine is what actually opens iron. So you always do the initial processing is heating iron till it's kind of red hot, and then quenching it into cow urine, and it
No way.
completely just destroys all the rust. It goes back to black. You can bend it. You can it sort of makes the rust the iron supple. It loses the excess rust. It becomes supple. It goes black and it begins to open. And then from there, you process it with amla, which can go into the material because you've already broken it down structurally. So cow urine is
Wow.
the sort of the main first primary treatment on iron. Secondary is amla.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is interesting. Um, Other than iron, what other mineral or not mineral, metal do you use very commonly? And do you prepare these yourself as well?
I
These
try
different.
to. Yeah, I kept my hand in after I trained in Sri Lanka in between. I was there for a year in 2000 and I went 2005. I was there for 2005, and yeah, I kind of did most of the stuff while I was there. I had a very unusual um, stint while I was there. Normally, students would go for 3 months from the college when I was training, but I spoke to somebody over there and they said you really need 12 months at least minimum. So I kind of a bit reluctantly did it because it was a long stay for me, but I stayed there for 12 months almost, and I was preparing most of these things. So I was learning or trying to understand how you would prepare them. Then since I've come back, I've never stopped making it. I've always looking for new things to try and experiment with. So I like practical work. I like to do things rather than
Mm,
just I don't. The theory interests me, but
mm,
I learn much more by doing it. So
wow.
yeah, probably things like the low temperature metals are quite easy because you don't need specialist equipment to do that. So lead, zinc, tin. Tin is the lowest melting metal, so those are quite easy to process because you don't need a lot of heat to do it. Once you get up into like gold, silver, copper, you're in the mid-range metals,
Mm,
so you're kind of 1,000 degrees, 1,100 degrees, and then finally once you get up to about 15, 1,600, you're up to iron. So you need
mm,
specialist equipment to be able to do it, and it's quite dangerous as well. I mean, it's I wouldn't recommend anyone do it without you need to see somebody do it and explain it. Don't ever just dive in and start heating
Mm.
metal and trying to prepare it, because they can do all kinds of weird things. You know, they have unique characters. Like
Mm.
tin will just explode when you're not expecting it to. It can just suddenly go bang and fly around everywhere. And lead does very strange things. It can be very passive sometimes, and it can sort of hiss like a snake and then explode. And so you just
Really?
have to be really careful and know the signs and know how to use them. So it is an art, and I recommend everybody, if they were interested in learning more about this, don't experiment. Just find somebody that already knows how to do it, because it's quite dangerous. You know, that's another thing about alchemy. It's you're working
Yeah.
with high temperatures, you're working with toxic materials. So yeah, it's not for everybody. But
Yeah.
if you're interested in those things, it's fascinating. Yeah, I do. I do classes. I mean, not so much in the UK, because I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be. There's so many people here that are that interested. Do you know what I mean? It
Mm.
kinds to be tends to be more European. America, Europe, Germany's got a very big alchemical tradition. Generally, it's Western alchemists who are already understanding these materials and want to look at it from an Asian, Ayurvedic, Indian perspective. You know, I've looked at other systems as well. I mean, I'm quite interested in how some of the Chinese, because obviously the Chinese have a big alchemical tradition. That's quite interesting. And of course, the Unani has a massive, as big as the Rasa Shastra. You know, there is the all everything in Rasa Shastra. There'll be an equivalent. There'll be a Unani equivalent. They have all the same things, but they have
Mm.
slightly different processing techniques. And some systems they can actually be better. I prefer those. Some of the Unani techniques I actually prefer. They make more sense to me, and they're much. I wouldn't say quicker, but they're simpler. They don't
Mm.
involve so much effort to get to the end product. So it's almost like
Mm.
it's a refined, you know, they've looked at a technique and thought, well, let's try and make it a little bit simpler but still keep the potency. So it's very good for that. So I tend to always look at, if I'm looking at a new remedy and I want to prepare it, I'll read the Ayurvedic text and I'll read the Unani text and try and see
Yeah.
how they're both approaching it and what's their interpretation of how to do that. It's always worth doing that. But yeah, there's some fascinating equivalents. They're all very similar. They're more similar than they are dissimilar. I'll say that.
Mm. Yeah. Um, Recently I've seen on social media, um, like a little trend going on about eating healthily, or like enhancing your physical constitution, and that affecting eye color change. Now, is that a thing, or is that a myth or something?
I have to be
Uh,
careful what I say, because obviously, well, I upset people on that what I say about it anyway. But like, I've been photographing irises for since the late '90s, and I've got people that I've rephotographed and rephotographed quite a lot. I've literally, if you saw the database, I've got thousands of iris pictures, and I can take a picture now. Most, if I still know those people, I can retake their iris picture. I can guarantee the only thing that will change in there is the adaptive color. So adaptive means that it will have added to the
yeah.
iris. So let's take a classic example. I can see you're brown eyed. So over time, it's quite normal for the brown eye to appear with a sort of lightening at the edge. So as at the periphery of the iris, it can get lighter as we get older, and that's formed by a deposit that's in the upper layers of the cornea, which it's not actually on the iris. It's just you could think about it as, you know how some car headlights, they get dull as they go. You see an old car, don't you? The glass on the headlights is a bit frosty. It's the
Hmm.
same kind of thing. It's like constant exposure to the elements, the sun. It's just like a crystallization in that lens or that part of the iris.
Mm.
But the effect is it can make the iris look lighter. When you look at it in daylight, they can look a little bit lighter. Um,
Mm.
Also, if you were to look, if you're a brown constitution but a light brown constitution, you might find over time you get little pigment patches appear, like little dark spots that'll appear, like freckles
Mm.
on the skin or something like that. They'll accumulate over time.
Mm.
If the iris is slightly lighter, like a greeny coloured one, you might find it gets more yellowy green. these are
Mm.
adaptive pigments. They're things that are being added over time. There's no way, I've never seen an iris that was, let's say, brown and it went to being green, or green
Yeah.
iris that went to be blue. You
Yeah.
can't go the other way. And I've never seen one fiber change. So they used to say the idea was if you had an injury or something in the body, if you worked on it and you did all your juice fasting, your cleansing, the
Yeah.
iris would change. But I've never, nothing changes. I've seen even the microscopic fibers, they have little patterns, and sometimes their
Mm.
sheaths split, and you can even see a little bit of the capillary that's feeding that fiber. They're
Mm.
still there
Mm.
from 30 years ago or 25 years ago. So I would say the iris does change, but it's an adaptive change. Things will happen over time and you will add to what you've already got. It never goes the
Mm.
other way. And people say that when they go, oh, you know, I was green eyed, now I'm blue. Quite often it's bad photography, or ambient lighting, just being under different lights. If you're under a tungsten light or if you're under a
Yeah.
daylight bulb, it can look very different in sunlight. Even the clothes you wear. If I'm green eyed and
Yeah.
I'm wearing green
Yeah.
and I'm out in the sun, my eyes will look more green.
Yeah.
So it's
So,
literally like that.
yeah. Don't trust everything you see online.
Yeah, I mean, you can see they do tend to put pictures up. They'll say, "Here's one I did before I fast," and here. But if you look at it in context of the camera work, quite often they've got all the wrong color balance set up on the camera. So
Mm.
one, you'll see the skin will look bluey, and another it will look very orangey, depending
Yeah.
on the color balance of the camera or the light that it was taken under. It's usually just 60% of it, 70% is bad photography,
Yeah.
not consistent photography, or they're not, those pictures that they're showing aren't, they're not what they say. Quite often I see
Mm.
pictures online and it says before and after, and you can see it's not the same eye.
Mm.
It's obviously a
Yeah.
different. It's similar.
Yeah.
It looks similar, but
It's
if you look at the
clickbait.
image, yeah, if you look at the fine, and another thing that happens, of course, is as the light gets brighter, the pupil tends to get smaller to let less light in. So as the
Yeah.
uh, pupil contracts, the fibers accommodate that change and they
Mm.
change shape. So people say, I used to have a big opening in my eye, but as you can see now it's gone. But that's because the pupil's smaller and the fibers have had to stretch out to accommodate that shrinkage of the pupil. It's a bit
Wow.
like writing your name on a balloon, writing
Mm.
a letter and then blowing the balloon up, the letter will stretch
Mm.
with the balloon. It's the same with the iris. The shapes have to accommodate as they stretch, because they undergo
Mm.
quite a lot of acrobatics during the day, with bright light and suddenly dark light, and the pupil's doing a lot of changing size.
One way of understanding a person's constitution is obviously temperament or their doshas, and then looking into the eyes, but then also palmistry. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the reading
Hands.
of the hands? Yeah.
Well, while I was studying, while I was in Sri Lanka, one of the guys I spent a bit of time with over there, he was quite an accomplished palmist. So he wasn't particularly have a background in using it Ayurvedically, but he just showed me some interesting techniques, and it was enough to get me more interested in how the hand works and why we like the hand Ayurvedically, as we say. Constitutionally, it doesn't change so much throughout your life. Yes, there's that
Mm.
developmental period, through adolescence when the bones are still forming and setting. But generally, the shape of the hand, no matter what happens to the rest of the body, how we adapt, as we get older, we put on more weight, we lose our hair, all these things change the body in some
Our
form.
eyes change.
And the eye, well, adaptive changes to the eye. Remember, the eye
Yeah.
tends to show, the eye really doesn't change that much. So if you looked at it
Yeah.
from you, if I looked at your eyes when you were 8 and now, fiber wise, there isn't going to be any difference, but there would be adaptive changes in there. Maybe the white's not as white as it was, and maybe there's some slight color buildup, maybe there's these rings starting to form a little bit. Those are adaptive. But the actual shape of the hand tends to stay the same.
Mhm.
So Hastareka is a very old technique. That really goes back to a lot of very old Indian texts. I mean, you're talking third, fourth century. They were already talking about hand. They've already made some. There's a very old book which makes connections between what they call the nakshatras, the Indian moon signs, a bit like the manzals. In the Arabic tradition, you have the 27 manzils or Arabic mansions. The moon spends one night in each house, and
Oh,
it
okay.
was so it would be auspicious to do a certain type of prayer, or maybe you would do something if the moon was in a particular place. That's a very old technique. The Indian one is probably the origin of that. It's very, very old, and they have 27 wives. The moon was masculine, and he has 27 wives, and he spends each one night with each wife. Yes, 20
Oh,
in a lunar month, like 27 days, 27 wives, and those were mapped onto the hand and talked about, and then each one of the wives
oh
was given
wow.
an energetic. So that's a kind of a so it's not so much about it wasn't like fortune telling, like I see you're going
No, no,
to marry
yeah.
a whatever, but that was a very early indication, and then it got developed. The three major lines, the heart line was Hridaya. So in Ayurvedic tradition, the heart is like the center. So it's read as it's not only is it your emotional relationships in life, it's also your the strength of your heart and your general health. And then you have the mother and father line. So what we call the lifeline now is Ayurveda. That's the breath of life. That's the
Mm,
father's lineage. And then the Matrureka, or what we call the air line or the headline, the one that goes right across the center of the palm,
mm,
that would be mother's lineage. That would be your inclinations, your kind of mental inclinations. So by a study of lines, you start to get a sense of constitution as well. And then hand shape. That is the hand very narrow and long? Is it squared and the fingers are short, or the fingers are long? And then these would be linked to the various types of dosha. So just by looking at the shape and patterns on the hand, we can use almost the same as iridology. You're looking at the iris to see these markings. It's the same on the hand. You're looking for a particularly strong finger. Do the fingers run parallel, or are they
mm,
knotted? They got do they look kind of knotted?
mm.
Do they start
What
thick?
does that symbolize?
Well, energy flows
Symbolize?
from the center of the palm up
Yeah,
through the
I'm looking at
fingers,
my
and it,
own.
depending what finger gets more activated. So if you get a finger that is bending more or is longer than the others or stands out in some way, if it's knotted, it creates more like a we would say that would be more air in the constitution, more vatary, more
Right.
changeable, because it's not flowing smoothly. It's like it's kind of pocketing as it goes up. Or
Oh, okay.
if it's wide at the base and very narrow at the top,
Yeah.
this is seen like as the pillar, like the base. This is like cover, and then vata towards the top, it gets narrower. So
Mm,
some people's don't know. They got very narrow bases and they splay out at the top. So
mm,
it's like it's an intention. It's like how energy is fed or gets enacted. So a
mm,
wide base is a good pillar. They start with good intentions, but does that intention, as it narrows, as it gets to the top, it's losing intention. So it's like they might be good initiators but terrible at carrying things out. The
mm,
end result doesn't actually get done. Or if it's very narrow at the bottom, they start with like they don't. There's no forethought. It just dives head on in.
mm,
The top flange of the finger is very wide. So
mm,
ultimately it works. They find a way to make it work. So they tend to be
mm,
more inquisitive, intuitive, quirky. They discover things by accident and that kind of thing.
mm,
Just all those kind of like patterns, and there's one flange longer than the other, and nail beds and the quality of the nail. Does the nail feel spongy? Is it hard? Is it very
mm,
white? Is it transparent? Is it soft and pink?
mm,
And markings on the nail as well. The nail tends to show like at least 6 to 8 months of growth. So if you
mm,
get lots of those white marks in there, depending where they are on the nail, that literally shows you like the last 6 or 7 months. So you can
mm,
see that there's been a disturbance or a break in something. If you see a white mark in there in the nail, there's been a disturbance, and you can sort of see when that's occurred. And then we relate each one of these to different body functions. So has it been more endocrinal? Is it more
mm.
structural? Is it more organs? There's all kinds of. I mean, it's another
Is
diagnostic tool.
yeah,
It's not.
yeah,
You don't go, oh, I'm going to live my whole life by my hands, but you can see, and the hands are so easily studyable as well.
yeah,
So when you're with your patients next time, just have a look at the hand. Just let the
mm,
hand naturally rest and
mm,
see, does one finger stand out? Is the middle
mm,
finger particularly long? You know,
Mm.
what's
What
the
does
thumb?
that mean? So, for example, if the middle finger is particularly.
Well, we see the middle finger is like our structure, it's the base. So if that's very strong and it's very straight, it shows that there's an inclination towards, it's all Saturnian. So Saturn represents time honored structure. So it's regime, structure, adherence to classical. So you'd be more likely to follow the rules. If that finger starts getting very short, you become more of a rule breaker or risk taker, or not wanting to do it the way everybody, going against the structure. You might get more trouble with the law, or you might get in trouble with your parents more, because
Mm.
it's a finger it's defying that. It wants to sort of try and do its own thing. It's trying to break with convention and go another
Mm.
way.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting. It reminds me of what I was taught once that back in the day, especially in like the Muslim world when the women were like very covered and so before they got married or they were being sought after or like they would look at the hands. And maybe they were reading all of this, who knows?
I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of Persian texts from around. I've got to get my dates right now because I'm not an expert on the textual side of this, but I think basically it's those Persian texts that are the most developed. And there's some of those from around. I've got to think of the dates now. I
For
mean, they're probably,
palmistry.
yeah, palmistry
Yeah,
texts, and they're quite old and they're very
yeah,
good and they're very detailed and they make a lot of good observations. It's not so much about fortune telling, it's
yeah,
more
yeah.
about what is the inherent structure. It's like, are the lines strong, are they clear, are they broken?
Mm,
The Indian palmistry is more about symbols as well. They're looking for symbols, so that's sort of slightly different. The Persian one is kind of more medical based. So like
right.
good quality,
Yeah,
good heart, good lineage. Is this person
yeah.
going to have a? Are you strong? Are you resilient? Are you going to be able to survive? Because all these things are really important. The last thing you wanted to do if you were in the ancient world is take a student to train, and they had
Mm,
a very weak hand, and you thought, well, yeah, they can learn, but
mm,
they may not have a lot. They may not have longevity. They might be
mm,
gone in 10 years. So I've given them all this knowledge, and they're not able to pass it on. So
mm,
longevity is an important part of picking your trainees, isn't it?
mm.
You
Yeah,
want to
definitely.
you want to pick somebody that's going to be around long enough. If they're a bit reckless and they're going to do something crazy, and you spent all this time, you're investing in time to
Yeah,
train them, and then they just go and kill themselves or do something mad.
yeah, of
So
course.
you can see how they
Yeah.
would use these signs. They were important, to them. I think I wouldn't throw it, I wouldn't just discard it. I think it's important and I think it's useful. And if you learn something of it, it can tell you something. It is
Oh,
useful.
yeah.
But I wouldn't rely on it 100% to like make a diagnosis, but it will certainly help you understand the person a bit more.
Of course, yeah. Um, Definitely is very is it as detailed as the Chinese face reading? Because I know that in like traditional Chinese medicine, face reading is very detailed, very big and very what's the word? Comprehensive? I don't know. Like there's a lot to it.
Mm,
Um, the shape of the eyebrows, the length, the thickness, the height. How is it closer to the eye? Is it closer to the forehead? Are they closer together,
mm,
farther apart? Like just from the eyebrows, like all these like nuances, looking at these distinctions and um giving everything like meaning.
mm.
So is it as detailed as that? Like, do they look at?
No, I'd say it's pretty vast. I mean,
Yeah.
there are many schools. There's a school in the UK which is doing Western palmistry, but the guy who teaches it was he had an interest in he doesn't come from the East, but he has his background is in Eastern teaching. So even though he's teaching a very practical Western form of palmistry, he has an understanding of that as well. So it's quite a good way of, and that's quite detailed. That goes into a lot about psychology, personality, and that's based a lot about hand shape, finger length,
Mm,
dominant fingers. That can be really really useful. It's a good diagnostic
mm,
hand approach. But certainly the classics, yes, and lots of books on palmistry. my only criticism would be that they do vary a little bit. They don't, some of the interpretations are quite different. And as you go back in time and the older the books get, how the meanings of the lines have adapted over time. So what we used to call, one particular line was called something else. I think the heart line originally in the oldest Indian books used to be the longevity line, whereas
Mm-hmm.
now we look at the lifeline as being the longevity line. So things have changed over time, but I'd say it's pretty vast. You could spend you could become a specialist in just doing that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think ideal for you, because if you're working with these people all day, just have a quick look in their hands and just see what's going on. Is there a dominant finger?
yeah.
Even the quality of the lines. Remember
Mm,
if you pull the skin back hard and you look at the lines, if the lines are few and they're quite simplistic, they're not
mm,
all over the place. Remember, the lines tend to show you how the inner workings are. So
mm,
it's not that the person's simple, but they're uncomplicated. Life is
mm,
much more simple for them. There are
mm,
basic priorities and things that need to be fulfilled
mm,
for them to be satisfied. If you look
mm,
at the lines and they're highly complex and they're just going
mm.
everywhere, like it's a zigzag of like explosion of lines, that's how they are inside. Their brain
Yeah,
is just like going in every direction. There's no focus. They're kind of all over the place. Everything's open. The nothing's set. They're very kind of agitated, and so just seeing that basic thing can be super useful.
so some of these rasa formulations, are they able to target like tumors and help shrink them or like break them down? And yeah,
Again, you'd have to
simple
look.
answer, yes.
The answer is kind of yes, but it's like it's not. I couldn't say yes. They just cure. Again, you have to look at what the body needs, and
Yeah.
some materials. Generally, the concept in Rasa Shastra is Visha and Amrita. So one is poison and one is nectar. So it's the same material. One side it's toxic, one side it's poisonous. So
Mm,
generally, the things that are very poisonous are the things that will cure. So when you look at those kind of conditions, you tend to use more toxic materials because those will find the toxicity in the body and destroy it. It's like it's like
wow.
thieves know thieves, right? They
Mm,
know where they know where to look, they know where they hide, but they are highly
yeah,
effective. So to treat
yeah.
those really bad conditions or those like cancers and things like that, generally it's those visha, those poisonous materials that work the
Wow.
best. Yeah, and they have a hierarchy of poisons as well. So Sarpavisha
Yeah.
is like snake poison or scorpion poison. Brishtika is like like the top animal
Wow.
poisons, and then you have the vegetable poisons, and they counteract each other as well. So you can use aconite to counteract the effects of mercury, or you can use Kachala. Nux vomica counteracts aconite. Some energetics move from the head down, others move from the feet
Mm,
upwards. So if
mm,
one poison that goes from the head down, you give it the opposite poison that goes from the feet to the head. So
yeah.
it counteracts it all the time. So they have all different energetics, and
Yeah.
there's a whole Ayurvedic school for that.
Yeah.
The name escapes me at the moment, but it's basically all the
That's
science of poisons.